Welcome, beautiful souls, to the 52nd episode of the Perfectly Imperfect Spiritual Podcast. I'm your host, Marta the Medium, and today I have an extraordinary guest with me, Anne Bayford. Anne has built a rich career as a psychic medium, spiritual teacher, trance channeler, channeling information from the angelic realm and light council. Anne blends her personal experience with professional training. Her background of multiple near death experiences and a lifetime of intuitive ability gives her a unique depth of insight into the soul's journey. Anne believes in combining the soul's journey with psychology, as not all the answers are held within this lifetime, as past lives and as ancestral wounds can still influence blockages today from the past, and as coupled with her credentials in hypnotherapy, counseling, and energy healing, this allows her to offer clients both practical therapeutic tools and profound metaphysical guidance. She works with individuals seeking clarity, healing, or connection with the other side, and also dedicates time to educating others through workshops, courses, classes, retreats, and media on how to awaken their own inner wisdom. With an active website and social media presence, Anne stays connected to her audience, quote, illuminating their pathway, end of quote, to personal growth and spiritual understanding. Her story and services continue to inspire many globally and beyond as she bridges the gap between worlds in order to help others find peace, purpose, and hope. Anne Bayford has gained recognition in the spiritual community, and her work, especially her dramatic near death experience, and all of the stories about that, they've been featured in multiple media outlets. And she has appeared as a guest on several podcasts, YouTube shows, and interviews to share her experiences and knowledge around the world. And welcome. I am so honored to share this sacred space with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I really do appreciate that. Yeah, my stories of what I've been through, sort of my near-death experience, has really sort of opened up that. I just heard my guide say a can of worms. That's not what I was going to say, but yeah, it's opened up the world to me so that I could help others, in obviously through my trance channeling that I do as well, and information that I bring forward. But I think the biggest thing that I was told to sort of bring back to this planet, and and when I say planet, literally working in different dimensions, is about that you're never separated, but we tend to separate ourselves. So, trained and qualified as a counsellor originally, psychology wasn't just enough for me. It felt that there was something missing. I saw a number of clients over the years, and it just felt that it wasn't enough. So training all the other areas, and then working side by side guys, when I say these guys, these guides and counsel, I can help it to make much more sense to my clients. And I was just saying to you off camera before that I literally just saw 2 clients this morning, and they came to me for a soul editing, auditing sort of session where they've had things going on for them in their lives and trying to make sense. And a number of things that came up even this morning was literally about twin flames, soulmates, and past lives. And I need to prove that to somebody. It's no good just sitting there and just saying, oh, I think I saw you as blah, blah, blah in a previous lifetime. I need to bring the evidence through to them. So looking at what might be troubling them now in this lifetime, and then connecting the link to that. And this is exactly what I had with a client this morning. And believe it or not, she's a psychotherapist, so it's quite lovely. So just mixing the science world with the quantum fields and psychic abilities, and looking at mediumship, bringing it all together. I just love that. Love it to bits.
Yes, I am very, very excited because it's not a coincidence. We all know, we both know that Spirit put us together. And I've been supporting so many clients of mine on their soulmate twin flame journeys. And there's been like so many more women coming to me that really needed support and really wanted to heal, but they have not been able to do it via conventional way. So I was wondering whether we can talk today about love, relationships, with a hope that it's going to bring some peace and hope to anyone who have struggled with any challenging relationships in this lifetime? Because I know you've mentioned about past life, and maybe we can also dismantle that and what can be gained from that awareness of past life connections as well.
Yeah, well, I always I was it was interesting. I was teaching a group last night, and I always believe, that the soul being here, the whole reason for the soul being here is to learn, is to expand itself, and each lifetime we come in here and through incarnation is like our soul is developing and learning so much more about itself, and depending on the life that they're born into, so the soul pods, our family members, the version of ourself that's been created in this 3D reality, the person that we are right now, the experiences that we've gone through is what we end up attracting in. So,
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot with individuals by, we look at, that relationship that individual might have had with the individual. I mean, I've quite openly sort of said, I was in a previous 32-year relationship. Well, when I look back just in this lifetime, from my own family members who was quite toxic, it was really sort of breeding me really into, creating who I was to become as an adult, then to connect with somebody who was also narcissistic because I didn't know anything better. So the psychology, that's where it's important, where we learn that from what we have gone through. And I came from a very dysfunctional family, alcoholic stepfather, one was on drugs, we had domestic violence in the family, I was often beaten, and different things that are brought up in that family, and sexually abused, I mean, as a child. So, all those ingredients that we all have, all of us, from the families we're born into, the soul pods, believe it or not, those are the contracts that we've come in to have soul contracts. We are born into those families because we need to learn something. It was creating this ideal, this ideal person that I became to meet another toxic person, a narcissist, for me to grow through it, to learn more. But we're not taught this. When we go to school, we're taught about certain topics and subjects and maths, English, geography, whatever. And most of those topics we're not going to use in our everyday life. But we're not taught to sort of tune into our gut feelings, our intuition, to know when something feels right or not. If you're born into a family that's quite dysfunctional and toxic, you're only going to create more of that yourself. You don't know anything else. But literally and a lot of the clients who come to me, through their own spiritual awakening, something's happened. They've either lost their job or family members died, or they're going through some traumatic illness. I had a client earlier this morning diagnosed with breast cancer. And well, I've been working with her for some time now, but it's like when you go through your own spiritual awakening, you start looking at life in a different way, understanding actually that it's not the end of the world, that we have to look at why is this coming up for you right now, this version of your life, like who are you at this particular time. And actually, I'm often asked, like, how did you survive all that abuse? How did you survive? I mean, 3 near-death experiences that were documented, but even 3 years ago I had a stroke, fell down the stairs, broke my neck twice, and I wasn't talking and walking for 14 weeks. But what kept me going is there's a reason for this. It's a bigger story than what we are just thinking at this particular time. It's, we're so in our heads, we're so caught up with our 3D world of paying bills and the work that we do, and a lot of people do jobs that they don't like. They disconnect from their true self, their true reason why they're here. So it's about helping people to reconnect, as into looking at, what's going on for you right now. Is there a reason why this person's come into your life? It's about you gaining experience from that, sort of to look at it and to understand, actually, this is a lesson that I'm learning. Not that that person's consciously even aware, that toxic person. I can tell you now, my relationship, my 32-year, relationship with that toxic ex, even today, 3 years on, he doesn't quite get it. But from me walking away from him, from me leaving him, disrupted the whole family, lost everything financially as well, and, disembarked the children and everything. But, the only thing that he's sort of, because it's painful, he's sat down and he's looking at it now, but it's taken a longer process for him to process it all. But for us who go through this, like yourself, when we go through something that is emotional, that is our awakening, that's our spiritual awakening. It's for us to go internally then to do the work on ourselves. if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Do you
It
find that?
absolutely it absolutely makes sense, and I speak openly about it that my well, I've always been medium. I've been medium my whole life, but the awareness of the fact that I was a medium happened when I was going through a very, very stressful divorce court processes. It was 2018 that I left an abusive relationship, and I remember I was very, very depressed. I was very, very sad, and all of a sudden I started hearing the voice of my grandmother, and it was very positive, and there was no questioning. I just knew it was her, and I'm like, I am going insane. But then I've managed to speak with my spirit team, and they brought me the right teachers, and but it's the spirit word that really helped me, and it's that trauma that like cracked me open
Hmm.
to first of all to the ability to connect with the other side, or I feel I've always been able to, but also an ability to reconnect with my soul.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we need that. We it's because thank you, my guides just came in and said, because some people are so stupid. Sorry, I wouldn't have called people stupid, but because people are so stupid, as in they get caught up in their everyday life and they don't see this. And again, the 3D reality of what's going on. We they don't tend to see actually what is going on, and sometimes lose that, they have that disconnection. It's like, teaching my students or my clients to connect internally within themselves by doing that, and knowing that you actually there is no separation, and by actually tuning into your own guides. It's not about us as teachers like yourself. It's not we're here to facilitate that for them, but it's that them to have their direct connection. That's the most important thing in this world at this moment, to have their direct connection, that they're not following leaders as such. It's like for them to see what's right for them at any given time. But these lessons that crack us open, as you said, they're the awakening moments to sort of say, right, we need to take some time out now and look at, what's going on and what's been happening. And as I was saying, I had my client this morning, one of my other clients, that her situation with a soulmate, and looking at the past life connection, but also you know proving it to them that what that past life had brought up from with that individual person, they hadn't finished that lesson, so that person's come up again in their lifetime. So like in this lifetime, as a counselor, when I see clients, they might have something come up from, whether it's a fear, a phobia, or a nightmare from their childhood or relationship, that is emotionally triggered in them. Every so often something comes up. I mean, even like myself, I have a brand new relationship. I'm very happy and I love the person that I'm with right now. And we're starting life all over again, and it's wonderful.
Mm.
He's been in a narcissistic relationship as well. But for both of us, thankfully, we have this awareness that sometimes something will come up. I mean, something simple as in, he bought me some flowers a couple of weeks ago. And for me, it was like, what's he done wrong? So that he's not done anything wrong. It's a
Mhm.
trigger, emotional trigger from a relationship, a controlling
Mhm.
relationship. And I know this, but it's catching ourselves, making us aware that when something comes up and it feels uncomfortable inside of us, that instead of us reacting straight away, we've got to take some time out. And I actually came into my office and I sat with my guides, my team, and I was like, why am I feeling like this? What's going on? And then it was literally my guides sort of saying to me, this is one of those emotional triggers, and this is from your previous relationship.
Mm.
And I knew that in this lifetime, that previous relationship, the 32-year relationship, that was, a soulmate that came in. Soulmates can mean many different things, but this soulmate came in to teach me lessons. But he's not consciously aware of it as a human in this lifetime. But we had signed up soul contracts on the other side, and we were meant to come in. And actually, I was meant to step away from that relationship, but instead, I thought I had to stay in that relationship. So I love how we're all brought into each other's lives for us to grow.
Mhm. I've got two different thoughts at the same time, but I'll start with one. Would you be able to talk a little bit or a lot about the difference between karmic relationships, soulmate relationships, and twin flames? It's something that my clients, students ask me frequently. So I'm hoping that maybe with this podcast, we can debunk myths, and perhaps we can talk a little bit about soul contracts and type
Yeah,
of relationships.
I love. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. So, and my guy just said, "Don't you love them?" I went, "Oh my gosh." Okay, so the soul contracts that we sign before we come here. I mean, somebody asked me in my group last night and said, why do we keep coming around and around in each lifetime? Well, it's because our soul at any given time is learning certain information and the version of who we are. So each lifetime we come here, that version of who we are, and it's dictated also by the interaction of our family members. It's like that adds to it. It's like ingredients into a recipe. They're all those ingredients to make us who we are. We learn something about ourselves and we meet individuals on our journey. And then, one of my students last night said to me, "But why do we keep coming round and round and round again?" I said, "Because each version of your soul set of, everything you learn in a lifetime, your soul has this innate feeling like it wants to expand, it wants to grow. It's a bit like if you think of, if you have a petri dish and then you put some virus or some cells in there, it wants to multiply. And it's a bit like the soul when it becomes consciously aware of itself, it wants to expand itself, and it's only going to expand itself not externally from the physical body, but it has to be in the physical body to have all those senses that we have, the feeling, the touch, the sound, the smell, whatever. It has to be in the human body for it to actually be aware of itself. So the version of yourself constantly keeps changing. So it's a bit like, if we meet a complete stranger, that stranger, like all of us, when we meet someone down the road, is going to have their version in their mind of what that person might do for a living or what they might be like. We might judge them, and we don't really know that person. Then when we start to get to know them, we we see them from different perspectives. So the different versions. Now, if you think when we come into this lifetime, as I said to you before, like a little while ago, the ingredients of me coming from my family, like this great recipe to create me, by adding these ingredients of family members, the way they treated me, it was perfect to line me up for that toxic relationship. But that version that came in of who I was and the person that came in, my soulmate. And soulmates can be, there's many different types of soulmate relationships that you have. But that soulmate connection was literally to come in to wake me up to who I really am, to know how strong I am. So those soulmates, when they come in, there's many gifts that they can bring us, depending on what our soul needs to learn in any lifetime. So one of the ways of really identifying if it is a soulmate connection is literally being magnetized to somebody, that feel that strong connection, that you've got to be with each other for whatever reason, maybe not even knowing why, but it's just that real big pull. So that's how it happens with the connections that we meet from partners and relationships. We sort of can be magnetized. Now, what I have been finding recently with some clients is that if you haven't healed from a relationship, and this also happened to myself, if you haven't healed through that relationship of the person that you've left, if you haven't explored what had happened totally in that old relationship, you can still hold some of those wounds. So like with the scar tissue, you're pulling at it constantly, and you don't allow it to heal. And this is my findings. A lot of people tend to do it. Some people have a long-term relationship, and like I did, and you jump straight into another relationship because it's a way of going, yeah, I hate feeling how I felt in that old relationship. I'm going to show that person that I've moved on, and you can jump into these relationships. And I have some clients that have done it a number of times. I did it the once, and the once was enough, thank you very much. But I jumped into a relationship where it was a wounded soul contract. It was a wounded soul. We came together, and literally this person had gone through their situation that hadn't healed. We connected, and we bonded on a wound. We both had something similar in our old relationships. We come together, we hadn't shifted, we hadn't healed, and so it created a relationship where he was very avoidant, that avoidance style of running away constantly, not addressing anything, and with myself I was anxious styles, which makes sense how they both work together. And that had tapped on onto how I was as a child and my own father leaving me and stuff. So you can see actually by these relationships coming up in our lives, if we actually look at them, every relationship is helping us to heal. We can heal through it, but we have to take long enough to sit there and address what's going on for us. So with this person that I brought in, he was very much like a twin flame, a part of myself that hadn't been healed. And so when he came in, magnetized came in, sort of like a mirror image of something inside myself that hadn't been healed, and something hadn't been healed in him, and we were brought together. And I have this, as I say, with many clients. So twin flames is part of ourselves that break off, and we come together at any certain time to help to heal. So with the twin flames, those relationships, um, I feel we should have twin flames as really as friends, not as lovers, because it can be quite a roller coaster ride with a twin flame. And so there's that with the twin flames, and twin flames. You can feel quite twisted, and as I say, a roller coaster ride of emotions. And the soulmates that come in, but it's really about us doing the work internally on ourselves. Really, if that answers your question. If I haven't answered it, do let me know, because I've got them. They're chatting at the same time and giving me information. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So does that make sense so far?
Yes, it does. And I truly trust your spirit team. And then my guides are really very talkative here as well. So we're covering, well, you can talk for hours about relationships. What has just popped into my mind is that this is what I discovered for myself. Like, I grew up in a dysfunctional family, alcoholism, everything that you can imagine. And then, of course, I ended up in an abusive relationship. And then I left. And but what? This is the exciting part for anyone who's watching it or listening to it. Well, I took a couple of years to heal after I left that abusive relationship, but the universe, as you were describing, started sending me the wounded soulmates, wounded partners. But already back then, I had an awareness. I'm like, no, but the universe wanted to test me. And then I remember my daughter wanted to arrange all of a sudden a play date, wanted to ask someone for a telephone number, and I'm like, and back then I remember I spoke with my guides. Look, this is a narcissist. This is a very unhealthy relationship. Please, if it is not for my highest good, remove that person from my life. And on 3 occasions, spirit words removed those men, and within a day they disappeared, and they would be present in my life, in the circumstances, in the places where I had to go regularly. So I want to tell everyone that you can also speak to your spirit team that, look, I know what you're up to. I've learned my lessons. You are not going to get me into any of those. Like, no, thank you. I found that fascinating.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was saying this to my client this morning, because she was saying something about a situation with this gentleman, and I said, the universe is always going to bring you opportunities for growth, and opportunities. What are you ready for? And I said, your free will is to say, my free will is that no, thank you very much. I can see what's going to move ahead, or I can see the situation. I have an understanding now, a greater understanding, and no, thank you very much. I choose not to do that. And yes, I mean, individuals feel that when this come in, and she was told something about karmic healing this morning, so she had it, and I said, it's your free will. You decide whether you want to go for that or not. It's actually by knowing yourself, like we had just said, it's by knowing yourself that if something's not quite right, or you've gone through that situation, by saying no means that you're saying to the universe, I've learned that lesson, thank you very much. Can we move on? Can we move forward? And the universe gets that message and goes, right, okay, we understand that, you've learned that, and that's absolutely fine. And people can do that. And I was saying that I've moved into a new relationship now, and we're going to get married shortly. And I wasn't even looking for a partner. I was like, yeah, I'm prepared to be on my own now. I'm not interested. But what the difference was, and this is what I teach. I ran a group where going into that queen energy, looking at what is rightfully yours, and I shifted from the other energy of being the survivor, the victim, and I moved up now into the queen energy. And after I went into that queen energy and the manifestation, and looking at what I wanted, I actually created a list. And I said to the universe, I said, look, I would like, this person. I did the list of what I wanted. I wanted them to be my rock. I want them to be my side. I gave them the universe to the details of exactly what I wanted in the person that I've brought in now. I didn't say to them, okay, I want it to come in this shape or form, because as we know with manifestation, you have to be open. I've run many courses where someone sort of said, "I win the lottery," and you're like, "But why? You know, how? What's to say you win the lottery this lifetime? What is it that you do want?" I think when you know what you want, and from being in those relationships, the relationships are teaching you what you don't want and do not want to be treated, and you look at that like and take them as lessons, just like they're lessons that's just showing me that that's not how I want to be treated and how do I want to be treated. And you can create that list and you step into a queen energy mode. A queen does not chase. A queen awaits what's come forward, and she can turn around and say no. And I totally said no to quite a few. But going into your queen energy, you're going to attract that individual is also in their king energy or another queen energy, whatever it is that you want, that they will create that high frequency. So as you are creating that high frequency, you know who you are, you're going to attract it in. But it's through those toxic relationships we learn through that, as in we don't have to tolerate that. And I wish I knew that earlier, and I didn't. I was listening to my mother and my mother-in-law, them saying, "Oh no, he's a good man, he doesn't hit you, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that." That was from my first relationship, because of their experiences. But instead I should have just tuned into my own heart and sort of said, right, I'm not going to be here anymore. And that was the biggest statement I had to make. Yeah. Really important.
This is what I hope for my daughter, because I've realized like no one has ever told me, Marta, spend time with yourself, know yourself at a soul level, get to know what it is that you are yes for, what you are no for. And it's only through the life experiences that I've learned that actually it is so important to get to know yourself.
Yeah, and if you and it sounds very like cliche, but if you love yourself, which is however that might sound, a not narcissistic way, but you see what we're putting out into the world and what other people are seeing is how you feel about yourself, all of us. So you can't mask that. And people, you know, their gut feelings, well, it's a bit like animals, dogs in particular, they'll know straight away, oh, and cats, thank you. They'll know straight away if they don't like a human being, because they're working with their natural instincts, their intuition, their gut feelings, their sixth sense. So, you know, we can't mask that if we're not feeling very, and I know this from my counseling, what I do with my clients, is that if you're not feeling very confident, if you haven't stepped into that confidence, and you say, for instance, you've got to stand up in front of a meeting and you've got to give a talk to like thousands of people, they're going to sense that. This is the thing. So you've got to learn, you've got to go inwards. The most important relationship you've got to have on the planet is with yourself first. You've got to wine and dine yourself first. You've got to like yourself. You've got to do that work. And when you get to that stage, this is what I call the queen energy. When you get to that stage of you knowing yourself inside out, you're not here to please others, you're here to please yourself. You end up meeting that match that is like you. And this is exactly when I went into this new relationship. I was like, right, I don't want any BS now. I haven't got time for that. And this is what the person had said too. And then we both met up and I said, this is what I do for, if you don't like it, tough, but this is me. I am a psychic medium. I do weird and wacky work. I work on murder cases. I work around the world. If you don't like it, that you might as well go now. And he just laughed and he said, that's what's attracted me to you. What you do. So you've got to be your full self. That's most important. And you said something really important there about your daughter. With my own daughter, she's met individuals. I mean, she's 31, but she's met individuals that much like her dad. And it's only me now moving into this new relationship that she's starting to see actually what a healthy relationship is looking like, because our children from us. Sadly, it took a long time for me to wake up and, what she's going through. But the children see through our lifestyles. They tend to copy us. They don't listen to us. They just tend to copy us. So that's made a massive change in your life. And so, daughter has a wonderful future to look forward to. She's not going to meet somebody, like your ex, which is amazing. It's a great gift you've given her.
Oh, it is amazing on various levels, but she's not good. That she will have that awareness. But this is key as well. I hope you have really listened clearly to Anne, that you can talk to your children, but it is like your behavior. Children observe what we are doing, so you can keep talking. But if you're not if it's not coherent, if you do other things, like there'll be that discrepancy, and yes, children will know straight away that
Yeah,
there is something off.
yeah, they're like animals. They've got feelings, their emotions straight away. They know. And there's a great saying, what is it, as parents say, do as I say, not as I do. But actually what their children do is do what you do. They follow that
Mm-hmm.
behavior. So yeah, you're correct. Yeah, you're so correct. But you can, this is the other thing that, you know, we both speak of our past, that, you know, people who are listening to this, sometimes that, what I have found is that some people think, well, I've come from this background, I can't achieve this, I can't do this. Well, you're the only one that's limiting you. It's nothing, you know. I think it's amazing that you have, you know, individuals who are listening to this, they may have understood, you know, their background, and yes, they've come from a certain background, they might have been treated in a certain way by parents or lovers or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute you can identify, the minute you understand that, and that's where the counselling came in before, the minute someone understands their background and where they've come from, this is also even with the past life stuff, that they have an understanding that repeating patterns from also from a past life, then you can start changing it. If you don't know yourself, then it's hard to move forward. So the minute you can, you know, connect this and it resonates for you, then you know that you can make those changes, because that means that you have the awareness in you. And I had this with a client this morning, and I said to her, actually, from what you have said to me, you now have this awareness in you that now you can start making the change. You couldn't have done that last year because you didn't have that knowledge. But now that it sits inside of you, that wisdom, that knowledge that she has to get out of a situation, it's now time for her because she's ready to it. So we've got to be consciously engaged with that process too. Somebody can't do it for you. I had a client, I think it was a couple of months ago, and I normally say to them, right, okay, you're going to do so many sessions with me, and at the end of that, then we're done. And they wanted to pay for more, and I said, you're not doing your homework, you're not engaging in this, I don't want to see you anymore. And she got quite upset, and I said, I don't mean it rude, but just by saying by proxy that you're attending a therapy session, that you think you're going to feel that you're changing your life, it's not going to work. You have to do the work on yourself. And that's why we're here as a soul, that we are doing the work on ourselves in the human vessel, so that in our next incarnation we won't be repeating that cycle again. So it's about us doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and taking responsibility. Yes, and I've even written down the word awareness here, because this is what I wanted to talk a little bit more. Because you've given, I'm sure, I know you've given hope to so many people, because when you started describing your new relationship, you started mentioning about your own awareness of certain triggers, like with that story of the flowers. So I want everyone to know that you can still, well, your future doesn't determine well, your past doesn't determine your present and then your future, and that you can still carry on opening your heart space. And it's that awareness that's so crucial, that you can catch yourself, oh, this is from the past. Like, can we just work through it? Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because many people maybe think, oh, I've been through so much, I don't want anything, or maybe it's not even going to be possible for me.
Okay, I love that. And this came up the other night as well in one of the classes, one of the classes I was running. One, yes, it's having that conscious awareness. And what that just means is being aware that a repeating pattern. So generally you're aware of, oh, I'm going through this again, or you're feeling really emotional in your body, and you've got all your senses, you know, you feel either you're crying, or you feel scared, or, you know, fight, flee, or freeze, whatever. When that's coming up, we call it as an emotional trigger, that's it's residing inside your body. I mean, I have this even with individuals I've worked with, say if they've been raped, that they're still holding on to it, you know, during the situation they may disassociate, so they're not feeling it, but then it still resides in their physical body. There's a great book, Your Body Keeps Score, and that also is like, from the physical point of view, your emotions, it's held in your cells on a cellular level. But you can work through it, but it has to be that awareness that there is something there that, you know, that you've picked up an emotion, you feel something. So like with me with the flowers, I know myself well enough now to go, right, I'm not going to react to those emotions in front of him. I need to take some time out. I need to sit with myself to actually go through that. Now, because I've done some of the work, and it makes sense. I mean, I've been a counsellor for over 30 years now, so analysing things for many years and then connecting to my guides and focusing and asking them questions. When we analyse, when we go into our mindset, what happens is we're going to our subconscious mind, and that's all the old data, that's all the old information, that all the experiences that we've ever gone through. So up until the age of 7, the caregivers in your life, everything that they had been around you. My daughter was scared of spiders because of my mother, scared of spiders, because she used to hear my mother screaming, and my mum used to look after my daughter when she was younger. And my daughter had to move she lived in New Zealand for, I think it was 14 months, and she lived out in the jungle in Borneo for a year. And obviously having a phobia of spiders, which they're spiders the size of a hand, we had to address. And that's how we trace back that it was actually because it was a memory, a behavior that she'd picked up from my mother, because before the age of 7. Now, after 7, biologically, your brain comes on gear. You can think for yourself. You begin to process the world in a different way. So we have to be very mindful of how we manipulate young people's minds before the age of 7. I mean, sending them to school too young or whatever, or other people having the influence on them. After the age of 7, you then have that mind, you can start questioning things, and this is what happens. So the idea is now to start questioning things. And what happens is all the emotions of experience. So where that happens to us in life, our brain automatically goes, I have to store that data because we want to protect you. It's really important. So you put your hand in a fire, it knows it's going to do that. So it stores that information. But when you are changing, and you'll know when you're changing, when you're starting to become wise, or you're learning things for experiences, as in a relationship you're moving out of, or a relationship being quite toxic, what happens is you're still storing the information. So it's a protective mode. So me with the flowers, that was a protective mode of saying, oh, he's done something wrong, because that was an emotional trigger from an experience I had previously before. But I've learned, when I take time out and sit with myself and go, right, that's a strong emotion. Is that representative of what's actually going on right now? So I take my time away. I've learned to connect with my guides and also with my higher self. My higher self, that doesn't mean it's higher away from you. It just means it's the knowledgeable part of you. It's your ancient soul. It's your soul self. When I connect to my soul self, which is, we call it higher self or subconsciousness, when I was having this conversation with Anne, the soul, like, what's going on? That soul self has an overall look at what's going on and sort of says, could this be a past trigger emotional experience you had experienced in a relationship? Now, my brain, Anne's brain, would be running 100 miles per hour going, oh, he's up to something, because that's how I've learned to process stuff. But by disconnecting through that, whether I go into meditation or I sit here and just be quiet for a little while, the information starts coming in. I ask my guides might go to my higher self, or I might go straight to my higher self and go, right, what's going on? And then I'll have a greater understanding. Actually, the bigger overall picture of this, Anne, almost like a helicopter or a drone looking down at my relationship, is saying it's an old trigger. So however uncomfortable you're feeling, that's that primeval feel that you feel, that, fight, flee, or freeze, that it's not attached to that old emotion or what that experience. It's actually a new experience. So let's overlay that. Let's rewire the brain and go, this is a really lovely experience. He's bought you flowers because it's a way of demonstrating his act of love, his act of service to you, to say that he cares about you. So when someone's going through that, your audience, if someone has experienced something, take some time out and go and sit for a little bit. Don't automatically react to something. Take some time out, sit. And if you're connecting to guides, that's brilliant, or your higher self, journaling your experience is always a good idea too. Because when you're journaling, you're then looking at it from so many different perspectives that you can voice it out on the paper. And sometimes some of your audience members may start automatic writing, which is then your guides are you that information, or your higher self is, and you might read it afterwards and go, I don't even remember writing that, or that's not what I would normally. And that's when you know your higher self is connecting with you.
I love it. And then you mentioned an important, well, everything was very important, but rewiring your brain. What I've also started doing, because of course I'm aware of my thoughts, and then my mind can give me hundreds of examples why things didn't work in the past, but I have post notes like everywhere at home. My wardrobe is just covered, and I started actually feeding my brain with the things that actually counterbalance, whether it's about a relationship, whether it's well, since we're talking about relationship, for instance, with men, so then I would say, oh, men open a door for me, and like feeding myself an example, the argued man. And then like so whatever you're going to concentrate on, you're going to get more on, I think, in terms of
Yeah,
energy.
yeah, no, it's so true. And I'm a hypnotherapist as well. One of the things about priming the mind to look for things, to make changes in the mind, and this is what I qualified in and trained in as well, about how the mind interprets the world around it. Now, if we go back to, if we think about the families that we're born into, how we process information, we've been taught through the family members and other people around us how to see the world. My mum was a great man hater. She hated them, and she attracted really toxic relationships in. And so my default button in my mind was, I'd heard my mum say this. So, all my life, what I'd been fed information. So this is old data. We need new updating software with our phones, or we turn our computers on, it says this new software update, can you take some time to install it? This is what happens when we start connecting to source. This is what happens when we connect to our guides or our higher self. It's giving us the new data software program. And this is what I'm saying. The most important thing is, our brain scientifically, looking at the biological part of the brain, our brain has the ability to start changing, as in the sense of, our behavior, we can change it. And this is the brilliant thing. It's been proven in science that we can constantly change how we behave or how we see things. We just got to be consciously aware of it. We wake up to that. And that's why I feel we have these massive spiritual awakenings from whatever happens. Now you can start making those changes. I mean, when I died the first time in 2002, and I got knocked down by the van and disabled for 4 years and had the out of body experience and went to the Akashic Records and went with Light Council, they were showing me, what I could make some changes and what I could bring in the messages and stuff. But my physical body was absolutely damaged. They were going to amputate my leg. My heart had stopped. I had internal bleeding. Gallbladder was moved. There was so much damage. I was in a wheelchair for 2 years, and 2 years after that, walking with a walking stick. So physically, my body had really gone through so much. And that's when I came across Dr. Joe Dispenza about, he had an accident and he had to help his spine, and they would fuse it with bars and everything else. Anyway, that's another story. And he's a doctor. And something he said about white light and envisioning like how cells rebuilding themselves and fixing themselves. And that's what I did. And I didn't lose my leg, and I'm absolutely fine today. But it's like our beliefs, and our brain is so powerful. We only use 3% of our brain or whatever it was, but we only use a fraction. So I was studied at one of the hospitals in the UK where they put some probes on my head, and they asked me to go into trance. It was a little program I was on. And when I went into trance with that came through, they said it looked like I was having an epileptic, fit, and I wasn't. I was just in trance because my brain was firing off in a different way, and so they were recording it. So what I always say is that and this has worked with many clients over the last 10 years since I've been working, now 11,500 clients around the world, that literally before you go to bed, I mean, we call it now gratitude list, but it wasn't called it back then. But before you go to bed, if you can recall something amazing that's happened in your day, something very small. And I started this, as I say, when I had my accident 20 something years ago now. I remember seeing a squirrel that was on a tree, and it turned over and it fell over, and it made me laugh. That was a snapshot. I remembered it so well, and I still remember it now. But I took that to bed with me. So I remembered it. I recalled it at the time of how my body was feeling, those happy, emotional feelings. I recalled it before I went to bed in my head. And so what happened is my brain no longer was going to bed going, oh, I've been diagnosed with this, I've got this condition, I can't walk, or I've got these bills, I'm in so much debt. Because the brain automatically, when you're sleeping, tries to fix everything. Instead, I needed to rewire. I needed to create new synapses, which are like a train station, and neural pathways, by looking at those positive things that's happening in your day, at least 5 things. If you can do that every night, your brain then goes away and it feels it's being efficient by searching for new things, looking for those positive things in life. So we're reprogramming the brain. So then when you wake up, you don't feel exhausted, you don't feel tired, you don't feel worried. Already you're moving forward. You're on a fast track already to the next day. And if you wake up the next day, when my lungs collapsed the second time during my near-death experience, my lungs totally collapsed and I was taken into hospital and I had my angel experience then, that I kept on waking up going, I've been diagnosed with this lung condition, I'm now going to have oxygen the rest of my life. Instead, I changed that narrative in my mind and rewired it, and then my lungs function, even though biologically, physiology, they shouldn't, but my lungs are functioning. It's what the inner voice is telling us, but we can change it every single minute of the day. We can change it, and I think that's the most important, what people take away with them, is that knowing that every day, every moment, when someone's on a diet and they've had that chocolate bar or whatever it is, don't beat yourself up for it. Know the next minute you're not going to do it, and just prolong it as long as you can or whatever. But if you keep beating yourself up internally, you're your own worst enemy. So instead, it's about, connecting to your higher self source, connecting to your guides, knowing that through meditation that you connect to source and you have that unconditional love, and no one's putting you down on that side. That source energy is there to bring you that awareness of your soul, the existence, that you're moving forward. It only wants the best for you.
Since you've started mentioning about your near-death experiences, could you talk a little bit? How many near-death experiences have you had, and what have they taught you? And I'm curious whether those experiences contributed to you being even more sure that you wanted to support other people with your connection to the spirit world, or perhaps there was a different moment when you said yes to the spirit world.
Okay, I love that. So from being a child, I didn't realize this. My mother and father had separated, and I later found out that my father was a psychic medium, and I didn't know this. And his mother is a psychic, well, she was a psychic medium too, and she did all the spiritualist churches. So it was on the bloodline on my father's, and it goes back many generations on his side. And on my mother's side, my grandfather and his sister were psychic mediums, and I didn't realize this at all till later on in life. So on both bloodlines, we had it, and I hadn't been brought up with any of them, except for my grandfather, but he never discussed it. So as I was growing up, I would always see spirit as a child, and I would always hear information and animals. I could hear animals speaking to me. So there was all that information. And as I was growing up, I felt that I was a bit strange. So my mother was really scared of me sort of saying to the world that I could see things, or I heard animals talking or whatever. So I became quite scared of it, and I shut down. And there was actually a moment where I was placed in a psychiatric unit from where something had come up because of I heard voices. And, today there's many people, I work a lot with doctors around the world now, that sometimes they will refer clients to me before they make that statement, oh, this person is schizophrenic. It might be they're actually psychic medium. So luckily I'm in that fortunate position. But it was literally through, me shutting it down as a teenager, because I'd experienced poltergeists and everything, that I was so scared that I didn't want to see any more individuals, that it was the accident that woke it back up again, that through that near-death experience, or getting knocked down by the van and dying in 7 minutes, and seeing my body from, out of body experience, looking down and realizing it was me. And then, as I was saying, going somewhere else, I didn't know what that was called at the time. I was told it was the Hall of Souls. Now we would call it the Akashic Records, giving information there that I was going to come back and teach others, and I was going to go on to channel information and be a member. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this. I'm happy with my job. I'll stay in my job. Why would I want to become a professional medium? And even for many years after that, I worked in a hospital. I was a consultant there. I'd done many different jobs, and this was never meant to be my profession. I was a counsellor, therapist, and I was quite happy with that. But I also knew that it was missing in my practice. So that was the first near-death experience, like 2002, it was March the 11th. I think it was about 20 past 2 in the afternoon in the UK. And then the second one, you know, what happened with that, because the first one really woke me up to, you know, the possibility there was other realms and dimensions. And I started training around the world and studying with some top psychic mediums, but it was just for a hobby. And then the second one, it was like my lung had totally collapsed, and then I was diagnosed with a lung condition, and then I started looking at past lives. I was then brought to Brian Wise, Dr. Brian Wise out in America, and I trained with him, and I'm one of his past life regression practitioners. And I learned that actually the scarring had come from a past life, because in this lifetime, doctors have said to me that you know, what's happened to your ill health, it would be that you'd be smoking thousands of cigarettes a day, and I had never smoked in my life. So through that experience of having angels stepping in, which I didn't believe in angels, you know, I had this experience of this angel coming in that woke me up to more information. And then the third one was I was on an operating table, and during the procedure my heart had stopped again, and I think it was something like 6 minutes or whatever it was. And again, I met one of my guides that had said to me, it's not time, you need to go back, you need to go back and teach people now, you need to teach them the information, you know, you have this connection. And so that was the third documented. Now, the fourth, I would say that I'd collapsed downstairs. I'd had a mini brain bleed and a seizure. That was 3 years ago. And then as I fell down the stairs, I collapsed. I broke my neck in 2 places. So that happened. And that was on Valentine's, February the 14th. And that was crazy. And so again, they said, we were just rewiring your brain because you're going to go on to do trance channeling, more of that now, and we need to work with the brain in a different way. And so again, that has brought a gift. But each time it's been quite dramatic, but it's actually bringing forward that information on the other side, my connection to source. I understand it now so much more. And each time something happens, I gain more information. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. What else do you think it is relevant to add to this conversation today?
What else I feel that I could add to the conversation today? Is that what you said? Because we just cut out slightly then. Is
yes, yeah. Anything that you feel we should cover, or maybe your spirit guides are telling you. It can be on a completely different subject, but anything you feel it's important to mention today.
I think that the first and foremost, the thing that comes forward is that literally this mission, your soul journey, the being human, is your mission, is your purpose in finding yourself. Sometimes people are, oh, why am I here? What's the reason? There's many reasons we think they could be here, but the first and foremost is to discover yourself, is to feel comfortable with yourself, and it has to always start with that. You know, I teach many of my students about psychic mediumship and channeling and everything else, and even, you know, I have doctors and psychotherapists that want to use energy work with their science work, and I teach them too. But the most important thing that I found over the years is about people connecting back to themselves. So having a greater understanding. So it's not just about the psychology, you know, as a counselor, you know, going with somebody on their journey, but it's looking at the energy. You know, why was I born into that family? Look at what you've learned from that family. What is it they've taught you? Not that they're consciously going to be aware of this. It's not that we're giving thanks to any individual that might treat you in a toxic way. That's not what I'm saying. You spin it around and look at it, and you go like a mirror. You turn it over and you go, right, what has this taught me? Well, you know, who am I? What have I been learning from my lifetime in this soul version of myself right now? And then once you start building up that connection to having a great understanding of yourself, then allowing yourself then to really connect to source. I mean, if I look back at every situation I've been in, and many of my students and clients too, when you start having a great understanding of yourself, and then you start understanding to connect to source, which is where unconditional love resides, you then connect to your higher self, and the higher self helps you on this journey. You see, what happens is sometimes we talk to our friends and ask them for their opinion, or, you know, can they help us in whatever shape and form? And what they do in this situation, you know, with that partner, they've treated me this way. They're only ever going to give you from their own experiences. And so they've lived life slightly different from yourself. So there are some situations you talk to your friends, you know, yeah, they totally get me, they understand me so well. But when we do that, we're handing over our sovereignty. We're not really taking responsibility for ourselves. We're letting somebody else decide our destiny. But when we are our authentic self, when we know, who we really are, we own that sovereignty of who we are, then we live life from a different position. And we should really go into the heart center, sort of feel into it, let our body feel into it, not our minds analyzing it. It's more about our heart. What is it my gut feeling is telling me? What's my intuition? What's my natural psychic ability? What is it showing me? And knowing that you are your own superhero. You don't need somebody else to do this for you. You may need a teacher to be the facilitator, to teach you how to do it. But it has to come from the heart center, not from the head. The brain was here to help us, obviously, so that with some experiences, we don't want to burn ourselves, and we know we get burnt if we do this, is to protect us. But it's not the overall riding factor to give us the clue how we move forward. And just to keep updating our software. And that means, as in learning, sort of expanding ourselves, having an understanding again of ourselves, and through that connection with higher source, which you can gain through meditation or being out in nature, or there's several other ways that you gain access to that. So I would say that's the biggest sort of takeaway from this, is find more out about yourself, how you tick, how you work. And and to work with that side of things, working on your soul, and you can get through anything. And because that will then not hold any barriers. It won't be the voice saying from the ego or from the subconscious mind, no, you can't do this because you're stupid or whatever it is. It's more like, okay, let's do this. And that's when you know your guides are with you. They're the ones that are going, yeah, we're supporting you, you can do this, and gives you directions to your next step.
Beautiful. And finally, how can people work with you and where they can find you?
Thank you, Marta. Okay, so I have an Instagram web page, Instagram page, which is Anne Bayford, and I give daily information out there. And then I also have a website, so www.annebayford.com. I can all the scheduling, everything there that you need about me, information, and some of my courses that are online that you can go there. And then my YouTube channel, which is Anne Bayford, and a lot of my trance channeling work is on there when light counsel speak and come through me. So you'll find that information on there. So yeah, that's how they can reach me. Any time of day.
Thank you. And I'm going to add all of the links to the description of the podcast. And thank you so much for opening your heart and sharing your journey with us today. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to say goodbye to all of the viewers and listeners. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.